Quantitative easing, or as many people see it, the most complicated economic system in existence, is clearly holding its name intact. Indeed, the media has unfortunately made this seem less complicated than it is, and many critics have actually jumped on this, stating that printing out more money isn't going to help our economy, while other economists are hesitant in saying so, stating that inflating our economy will bring down the prices of goods, and thus in the long term can be very detrimental or very beneficial. And to which we have to understand it's just not that easy. With an Economist article dated May 21st, 2013, reporting that unfortunately it's just as complicated as it sounds. There's not one person who can actually magnify the full aptitude of the outcome of the quantitative easing policy. And therefore, with such a complicated policy hanging in the balance, the New York Times was forced to ask the question: should Ben Bernanke bring down the quantitative easing policy? And the answer to this question is a fortunate yes, for the following three reasons. First, because if he does not, it's going to lead to lowered pension policies, or a lowered pension plan for those who have the policy. Secondly, because its main objective to lower the prices of goods has ultimately failed. And lastly, and most importantly, I shouldn't have said that, because of the global market and how it is overall going to lead to an unleveled playing field. Now first, what we're going to focus on is pension plans. Indeed, pension plans do not really flow with the idea of the economy's economic policy of quantitative easing, or so it may seem. Well, according to a Forbes article dated February 22nd, 2013, unfortunately, when looking at the situation, the pension plans have a direct correlation to the quantitative easing policy simply because of interest rates. Indeed, the interest rates is the link between the two. With interest rates slowly going down because of quantitative easing, it is leading to the pension plans checks and the amount that the constituents and associates are receiving to be lowered. Indeed, according to the same report, they're being halved, and that is going to lead the constituents of pension plans who don't have jobs because they retired and put their money into the pension plan to unfortunately have to readjust their lives to the amount of money that they're being given, and therefore it is clear that that many constituents are unfortunately not satisfied. Furthermore, according to a Brookings Institution article dated just last week, the Fed is actually stating that these constituents of the pension plan have to readjust their lives, and to do so, they have to in fact look to the interest rates and try utilizing them. But unfortunately, only 12% of them are able to do so, and therefore the pension plan policymakers have to in fact readjust themselves to the quantitative easing policy if in fact anything is to happen. And therefore it is a necessity that he wins down the policy so it's not carrying such lethal blows to those of the pension policymakers and those of its associates. But secondly, we have to further understand that when looking to this situation, unfortunately, it's not doing its main objective in the long term. And the reason for this is cleared up by an article published by the Bloomberg Business Week, dated February 12, 2013, that reports that while its main objective is to inflate the economy and bring down the prices, it's only a short-term objective, and therefore it's not carrying a significant outcome. And therefore it is a necessity that the United States readjust its policy to be winded down, because we've seen that this has been carried out 5 times, and in all 5 attempts it hasn't worked. So the United States should readjust its policies to in fact work in public sector commodities. And indeed, according to an article published by the New York Times of May of 2013, we see that the situation is getting even worse, with public sector commodities prices actually rising as the quantitative easing 4 did not work. It's clear that the quantitative easing 6, which carries the same policy, should not be carried out simply because it's not going to work, and it's going to work in the same manner that the quantitative easing 4 did, by even raising prices, which was its only objective not to do, or which was the only thing it shouldn't have done. And therefore, it should be winded down because it's not carrying out its main objective. But lastly, we have to realize that when looking at the situation, it's going to lead to an unleveled playing field. Indeed, according to El Paso of July of 2013, we see that the situation in Europe has actually begun to see itself at a positive note. And the reason for this is because the quantitative easing policy had begun to diminish. Indeed, the article goes on to report that unemployment rates have begun to stunt in countries such as Spain, Portugal, and Italy, three main constituents in the Eurozone crisis of 2011 that has carried on to present day. And indeed, the reason for this is because of quantitative easing, and how this is linked is because the United States' economy, after the quantitative easing, had actually begun to improve, surpass that in many economists. Indeed, from a 0.9% increase, as many economists in our GDP, as many economists had predicted, was actually brought to a 1.7%, and that in itself has direct correlation to quantitative easing policies beginning to diminish. And therefore, with that link actually improving the Eurozone's economy, it's clear that it must be winded down to help our constituents in Europe. And therefore, we have to understand that when looking at the situation, it is vital that Ben Bernanke winds down the quantitative easing policy for the three reasons that we discussed. First, because of pension policies that have actually begun to decrease. Secondly, because it hasn't even done its main objective in lowering prices. And lastly, because of an unleveled playing field. And therefore, it is a clear necessity that the United States makes quantitative easing a lot more simple by diminishing once and for all. Thank you.